Spokesperson Alina Habba is back with us. All right, so here we are 203 days before the election, 8 years later. Statute of limitations have passed. They upgraded misdemeanor and try and use a federal crime to charge Trump. Your reaction to all of it?
I think there's a couple facts that the American people need to know. You mentioned that Cy Vance didn't bring this case because he knew it was a loser case. The statute of limitations had run, and it was based on the now debunked former attorney, Michael Cohen. So what ends up happening, Sean? Let's talk about a key part of history here. President Trump announced that he was running for office again. And sure enough, DA Bragg indicts. You just played DA Bragg's video footage, much like Miss James, who you and I have spoken many times about, who are these Soros-backed, politically motivated people who come out and say, I know Trump well, I'm going to do it again. I did the Trump case, I did that case. Listen, Judge Merchan, Sean, the judge that's hearing this, did the Alan Weisselberg case, put him in jail, not once, twice. You know who else Judge Merchan's having? Steve Bannon. He has Steve Bannon's case. This is no coincidence, and the American people need to know. And for the next 6 weeks, I assure you, I will be loud and clear about what is going on here. This is political. It's election interference. You're not even allowing a father, never mind a former president, but a father attend his son's graduation. And let's not forget Passover. Okay? Observant Jews have a right to go and pray to who they want and observe Passover. And this judge would not allow it, not for any of the attorneys. And there are observant Jewish attorneys on the Trump team and as well on the DA team. It's just a sad state of affairs for the American people. I can assure you of that.
Well, I mean, I've said I don't believe the president can get a fair trial in New York, D.C., Fulton County, Georgia. I just don't believe it's possible. And if Democrats and these radical prosecutors have their way, all these trials would take place, and he'd be in a courtroom the entire 203 days leading up to the election. That's the America we're going to live in?
Yeah, that is. And meanwhile, Hunter Biden hasn't seen a courtroom other than for when his plea agreement fell through because the judge read the fine print and saw that he was going to get immunity. You know, not even allowing a person due process, the right to go sit in front of the Supreme Court and hear a case that determines many lawsuits that are currently against President Trump on immunity, on grounds for immunity. Let's not forget something here, Sean. President Trump was in Washington when this case was going on. When this is happening, when somebody made a notation in an accounting record at Trump Organization, he was in Washington taking care of this country. The absurdity is beyond. And I'm going to be talking about it loud and clear so that everybody knows how corrupt New York State has become.
All right, my friends, we are all aware of what's going on in this ridiculous New York case involving former President Donald Trump. There are several things that I want to make sure we stay up on day to day pertaining to this case. This video, I have 8 specific things I want to talk about so you understand what's going on in this nutty, crazy case involving former President Donald Trump. Now, obviously, the main thing going on here is this is all about persecution of Donald Trump, not his prosecution. It is all about election interference. It's all about keeping him tied up in court so he cannot go out and campaign and do what he needs to do to become the next president of the United States. Their only hope, the only hope of these woke radicals, these Democrats, these loons, is to tie Donald Trump up and prevent him somehow, some way, mess with this man to the point where he is effectively not able to run for president of the United States because they know they cannot beat him. They cannot beat him in the polls at the polling place coming up this November. It's really just that simple. And folks, I'm going to tell you something. As an American, obviously I've lived here my entire life. I have never seen nothing like this. It is a shame. It's a travesty. It is shameful. And I hope that we all get the message and we rise up and we make our voices heard at the polling place coming up this November. Now, there's 8 things I want you to specifically know we're going to go through pretty quickly because it's very important that you understand what's going on in this particular case right here. So this all has to do with the Federal Election Campaign Act, which is called the FECA. FECA. The 8 specific points that I want to briefly go over here is, remember this: the facts are really strong in President Trump's favor in this case. Now, it is true, being in New York City, 90-some% Democrat, it's going to be very difficult for President Donald Trump to get a fair trial. There's really no getting around that. However, the actual facts, the way he's charged in this particular case, there is a good chance of an acquittal in this case because the facts are in his side, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. The second thing to remember is that President Trump is the first former president to ever stand for a criminal trial. Absolutely unbelievable. He has to be in court each and every day. Now, you might ask, why is that? Because he's had other court hearings before Judge Engoron and these other cases, like with DA Fani Willis, where he hasn't had to attend. Well, a lot of the other court hearings are just that, hearings. He does not necessarily have to be there for hearings. And in a civil court context, the individual being sued does not necessarily have to be in court. Now, when it comes to a criminal proceeding, which of course this is a criminal proceeding, the attendance of the defendant, in this case, former President Donald Trump, is compulsory. You have to be there. There's nothing that he can do about it. Also, number 4, we've already talked about that it's over 90% Democratic in the New York City district that he's being hammered in with this persecution by a Democratic operative, this loony Alvin Bragg. All right. The trial is all about political persecution, election interference. This trial was rushed. It was rushed. It was, everybody says, oh, Donald Trump, he's not above the law. Well, folks, he's not below the law either. He should have had his normal course pertaining to this case. In other words, they rushed this case quickly to get it to trial. That's exactly what happened in this case, and it is an abomination, and it's just unfair because everybody else had to wait in line. Donald Trump should have waited in line, which meant that his case would not have happened for another year or two, but that is not something they want as far as the woke Democrats want, because they want to try him and get him branded as a felon as soon as they possibly can. Also, remember, all them documents were recently dumped, hundreds of thousands of documents by DA Alvin Bragg. His attorneys has not had time to go through all them documents yet. This Judge Merchant, decided, well, it doesn't matter. You've had enough time as far as I'm concerned going through the documents. Who knows? There could be information in those documents that further prove President Trump's innocence in this case, but the judge said, no, we're going to go forward with this trial. Again, we have a rush to judgment. It's also important to remember in this particular matter, no matter how this case ended up, no matter what the president did, in other words, if he paid through the campaign funds or he paid for it personally like he did originally, he would have been charged either way because he paid for it personally, thinking it's a personal expense, which of course it is a personal expense. You can look at my previous video for information pertaining to that. It is clearly a personal expense, yet the DA is charging him because he should have categorized it as a political expense through his campaign, which is completely nonsense. The campaign laws clearly state that it has to be an expense you would have had only if you were running for office in order for it to be categorized as a political expense. And clearly, the president did not want his wife to find out about the alleged affair, and that was the primary reason that he paid this money. So always remember that when you're thinking about this case, no matter what these other liberals on the news media try to tell you. It's also very important to understand that this judge, as we talked about, not only is he a Democrat himself, his daughter, as we have talked about in another video, is not just a Democratic operative. She's a Democratic power broker. She and her agency she represents has made over $93 million. $93 million for Democrats and other candidates that are Democrats. Her client list include, but are not limited to, President Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and of course, Adam Schiff of California. And we all know what his nickname is, according to former President Donald Trump. Finally, this is really important for you to understand too. The star witness of the prosecution/persecution is the former attorney of President Donald Trump, which of course is Michael Cohen. In order for Donald Trump to be found guilty in this case, you're going to have to believe that Michael Cohen, as his licensed practicing lawyer, gave his client, then Donald Trump, advice to go ahead and pay off Stormy Daniels. It was legal advice that he gave him. He gave him the advice of how to do it and in what manner to do it and how to pay for it. And yet now they want you to take Michael Cohen's word, and he is a convicted perjurer, a convicted liar, convicted of many, many crimes. Now they want you to punish Donald Trump, find him guilty of 34 felonies because Donald Trump followed the advice of his lawyer. Can you believe that? He followed the advice of his lawyer, Michael Cohen, and now he wants the jury to have Donald Trump found guilty of 34 felonies because he followed the advice of his licensed attorney, Michael Cohen. Absolutely ridiculous. Folks, this lawfare is out of hand. We have to put a stop to it. We have to get to the polls. We have to let everyone know what's going on. And listen, I'm asking for your help. Share this video with someone else who may not understand what's going on in this particular case. Some of your friends that are indoctrinated, that are confused, let them hear what I have to say in this video. And as always, if you have any comments, please put them in the comments below. I love to hear from each and every one of you. And I will be keeping you up, Lord willing, on this case day to day. I do appreciate you being with me. I always say keep that mind free. Never give up, my friends. And until next time, I am J.R. Dukes.